It has stopped raining for a minute, so I'm going to see if I can finally cut these rafters off to length and fit a fascia. So I've done lots of calculations here and worked out how many courses the longest slope should have. 17 courses of tiles, then it steps down to 15, and the sort of entrance lobby section will have 10 courses. So I've worked out how long the rafter length should be, taken off 20 mil or so for the fascia. I take measure there and another one there, so I'm just going to mark down a couple of rafters that I can pull a string line through and get those all marked up. Taken a load of measurements up the rafter, and the front wall of the building is not parallel to the back wall by about 30 mil, but over 10 meters. I don't think that's too bad, and that's just really because the wall at the back was obviously built against the existing wall there, so it's a little bit out. I've settled for a 400 mil overhang, and that'll work out pretty much perfectly for my courses of tiles. Done 400 mil there, marked on that rafter, and 400 mil marked at the end rafter that end, and I've got my string line now. Using an engineering brick as a plumb bob. You can see there my string line, and I'm just going to go along now and mark every rafter. So I mark it along here where the string is, and then I'll do a vertical mark with a level, get all those marked out. Gone along and marked everyone. That's how I did all the rafters on the garage there. Same way, string line, came out pretty good. But any carpenters out there, is there a better way of doing that? I've got my trusty hand saw. Yes, I do have a circular saw, and it would be quicker to chop these off with a circular saw, but I just find I can be a bit more accurate with this. Agree, it's pretty darn straight. Now I still do have 3 to do on that section, so obviously different measurements. Before I go any further, I want to go and buy some timber for the fascia, and I've just been trying to work out what depth of timber I need. So I've got a little mock up there, we're going to have a look. Got this bit of scrap timber here just to represent the fascia. Got a couple of battens in the right place, so taking a measurement there to give me the right overhang for the eaves. The roof is around 15 degrees, but the tiles, obviously because they overlap, they're actually about 10 degrees or 9.9 that says. Kind of depends slightly where you set it. There you go. So we've got 10 degrees on the tiles, so I've set this bottom one at 10 degrees as well. There you go. I can tell how high the fascia needs to be, and I'll probably use a deep flow gutter like this, about bang on halfway between. I actually got 9-inch deep. Now my reasoning for that is that will allow me to run a soffit under there with the fascia sticking down. I could of course have chopped off the bottom of these rafters horizontal, but the problem with doing that is the soffit then would be into that lintel. I think I'm going to try and drill all the holes before I prime it, etc., and paint it. there we have the fascia all cut to the right lengths. I've left a bit of overhang at either end. We trim that back when we start putting the roof tiles on. But what that's going to allow me to do now is just mark where all the rafters are, and then I'll pull the fascias back off and I can drill all the holes then. And then it's a case of priming it, undercoating it, then I'll fix it back, and then we can put the gloss paint on. Pulled the fascias off. There's the marks for where all the rafters are, so I'm just going to go and pre-drill everything so we can slap some paint on it. Got these all pilot holed up. I did a bit of research on the internet last night, and Dulux trade weather shield. So that's the gloss which I'll paint actually when the fascia's in situ, but I want to get the primer and the undercoat on. Never used this stuff before, but it's supposed to be a preservative and a primer in one. All this stuff is super expensive, by the way, but I don't want to be repainting this fascia in a couple of years' time. Let's try and whack a bit of this on. Next, the undercoat's going to go on, and this is like a dark grey colour. That primer stuff's clear, by the way, which is why it doesn't look like much has changed. And there are the fascias with some undercoat on. It's all pretty wet at the moment, but I haven't got enough screws. There was something else I was missing as well. So anyway, I'm going to run off to the shop now while that's drying and get some screws. The fascia is on, it's all screwed on, it's actually really level. That is only the undercoat that's on there, so I'm just going to fill the holes where the screws are, just wait for that to dry, sand it down, and I can actually put the top coat on. The only thing I don't quite like is obviously this is all the same fascia and it's perfectly lined up at the top, but yeah, it's not quite the same width. I guess it's just the tolerances of the cutting of the thing. If it really annoys me, I can just sand that flat. But I actually got that painted pretty much in record time. It's not the best job, but as you can see by the clouds, it keeps raining like every hour there's a little shower, so it's just really fighting to get that done as quickly as possible. There's a few runs and it isn't perfect, but once I get the eaves protector and even the tiles on there, I can sand down any runs and give it a second coat. But I just wanted to get at least one coat on just so I can get the eave protectors, and if you don't know what they are, they're these, or eave trays, they're these things here, and they sit over the top of the fascia, and it just stops the underlay sagging, gives it a bit of extra protection. But obviously once they're fitted, I can't get to the top of the fascia to paint it. Fitted the eaves tray, and I'll go up and have a closer look. So what I've done, because these eave trays are universal, if I'd fixed this edge straight to the rafter, it would have been almost flat. So I've just extended it up with a bit of feather edge board, and got about 1,000 fixings in. The next issue I have is I need to chop off the end of the steels. Now this steel is actually fine, but that second steel in just touches the underside of the underlay, which I don't like, so I am going to get my grinder out and just trim that to fit. See there, the steel is chopped off at an angle and just slap some paint on there a bit quick. I had a delivery, and this is the insulation for between the rafters. And there was actually 17 packs of this stuff. It's RW3, which is like quite a dense acoustic and thermal insulation. Yeah, it's quite overwhelming seeing all those packs, because all of that needs to go on the roof. And the problem I've got, slab insulation is only available in 600 wide. Of course my rafter centres are all 400 wide. So yeah, I have been cutting them down into strips. So you get 3 strips out of, they're 1.2 long, if that makes any sense. Cut them into 3s. I did manage to get 600mm laid all the way along the eaves there. The expanding foam there is just to take up any kind of air gaps just on that uneven bit of the eaves. And I have got first strip of the final underlay, this blue stuff here. So this goes up 1 metre. That's just some temporary membrane that's brought over the top. And I've got the first 2 proper roofing battens down. Forecast for today and tomorrow is supposed to be dry. I was really hoping just to get all this insulation on the roof between the rafters and hopefully the underlay and the battens. But already this morning it's been, yeah, drizzling a little bit. So I've just made use of time, got this tower in place. And I think what I'm going to do is actually cut up some of that insulation so it's all ready to go. Because I found doing this first row of insulation, I was just up and down the ladder cutting it, blah blah blah. So I think I'm going to get a stack of insulation already cut and ready just to plonk down in between the rafters. Hopefully it will clear up a bit, but those clouds look terrible. Cut these ones all, these are standard 400, and I've cut these slightly undersized at like 395 and these slightly oversized at 405, because I noticed when I did the first ones the rafters aren't perfect. So it gives me a little play anyway. It seemed to work out quite well doing that first row. Here's my little production line, using a bread knife actually, which I find is the best way to cut this Rockwool stuff. And using the insulation board there, you can see all the cuts. You can get quite a nice edge then. There are some odd size rafters, 2 or 3. I think it's because they're either side of the steel. But this insulation should get me up to just past that first purlin. So I think I'm going to go and have a cup of tea now. Hopefully then the clouds are all have gone and I can pull back that temporary underlay on the roof. Not sure how much of this I am going to film, because I basically need to expose the roof there, and it's just a case of getting that insulation thrown in as quick as possible, getting that underlay and batten back down again. And if I have to worry about also filming it, it's going to take way longer, and I'm just completely paranoid because it seems to be raining about 5 times a day at the moment. You see, most of that stack of insulation has gone, and I have actually now got a total of 3 lots of 600mm insulation. So yeah, 1.8 meters up from the bottom there, 2 lengths of underlay right across, and I think 4 lots of tiling batten. Today was supposed to be raining, it's Sunday, and I wanted to get a little bit done, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit and try and get the guttering on, which obviously opens up a can of worms. This was the existing rainwater pipe, and I left a connection there, so I've dug this out to fit a gully there. I'm going to fit a downpipe there, and so I know where the outlet goes and I can then fit the gutter in. But first of all, I'm going to cut a piece of underground pipe from the gully to the waste pipe there. Got those pipe edges beveled off, just makes it easier to install and doesn't rip apart the rubber seals. You can see there I've actually laid out the gutter in, so I know roughly what's happening with it. And then I've actually put a piece of masking tape along the fascia all the way along, just marked on here. So that's going to be a union there, and then that's your gutter bracket So gutter brackets are at about 1 metre apart. There I have my string line up. So I've just got a fixing at the lowest point there and a bracket at the highest point over there. String line, so now it's just a case of going along, fixing the brackets up. The guttering is on, so it's difficult to see, but there is obviously a bit of a fall on there, and I didn't film it, but I did fit a down pipe as well which goes into the gully. I haven't concreted that gully in just in case I need to tweak it at all. And the only other tip I would say is get yourself a long extension on your impact or drill. If you can imagine your gutter bracket is up against the fascia, if you've got this long extension you can actually get to the screws alright. Can't believe it, there's not a cloud in the sky today, and I think the forecast is pretty good for the next few days, so I'm going to try and crack on and finish all this insulation. Let's see how far we got so far. So you can see there on that old underlay flaps back, I've got 4 lots of 600mm insulation up the rafters now, so it's about 2.4, so we're probably just over halfway on this slope. There you go, perfect timing, there's a good view for you. Going to cut up some more. You can see here what I've been doing, just cutting up chunks. It's my little cutting station, getting those ready, getting them up on the roof, pulling back the old temporary underlay and slotting them in. I managed to get all the rafter insulation, underlay and final tile battens all installed. The top battens may need a bit of adjusting just for those mono ridge tiles. I even managed to get the fascia etc on that little section. We did have a crazy storm last night, so yeah, kept me awake all night, hoping the insulation is all dry still under the underlay there. I'm sure it's going to be fine, but it's supposed to be a nice day today, although there's still some pretty heavy winds. But we're hoping to do the roof tiling, or get a load of it done anyway. So Gary is going to arrive soon to give me a hand with that. Got enough tiling on there to allow Gary to muck in the verge, because he'll make a much neater job of it than I could ever do. but now we can actually walk on the roof a bit easier. It is super windy today. There's Gary. You having fun? So he's obviously in the neighbour's garden now. Just, yeah, pointing in the verge there. Make that nice and firm. So while he's doing that, I'm just going to start getting a few more tiles up. So we'll just carry on, but it's obviously much easier with two people, him handing it on to me. Anyway, I'm going to get off this roof before I've blown off. Let's go and see how Gary got on with that muck work. And there you go. Super neat job, much better than I could have done. I've got a few more tiles on there, but now Gary's finished on that verge. We're gonna try and get this roof loaded out. Pretty much the bulk of the tiles are on. Just got cut ones along there to do, and some probably half tiles along that verge. So I've left the last couple of courses loose, the top there because I might have to adjust them, and also the verges are loose there because I wasn't sure where the barge was going to go. So still a bit to do, but got most of these tiles on. I think this video is going to be quite long on a project already, so I'm going to call it there. If there's any new viewers, don't forget to go back and look at the whole series on this construction, all the way back to when we dug up the floor of the old workshop, all the underpinning, etc. That's been quite a popular video actually. Next time I need to finish off all the mono ridge tiles at the top of the roof and the verge to the left of the roof there. After that, maybe the windows, the doors, that kind of thing. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That will notify you of the next video. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time. Cheers.